Let's move on to a reiteration of something that I did back in 2018. I am going to represent for a lot of people out there that I'm horrifically disappointed in the truth community and freedom movement in particular. And I want you to really hear my words and the spirit coming out of my voice and out of my body right now, who think there's any such thing as a good cop. I hear it over and over again on social media, on YouTube, on interviews that people do, on podcasts that people do, and I'm fucking sick of it. To the core of my essence. That a cop can actually be a truly good person. Capital G, good, capital P, person. There is no such thing as a cop that is a truly, objectively, morally good human being. That is an oxymoron in terms and can never actually occur simultaneously in nature. It does not matter how good you are to individual people, to your own family members, how nice your disposition is as a human being. If you are active duty police or active duty military, you cannot be a moral human being from a true objective moral perspective. For one who understands true objective morality, anyone who understands that true logic and true philosophy from a moral standpoint knows that that is an absolute impossibility. So this section is called the sheer ridiculousness and absurdity of believing that there is such a thing as a good cop. It cannot occur, and the truth and freedom community who believes this, you have your head up your ass still. You have your head up your ass still. I will be re-giving a section now of a presentation I originally gave outside of Phoenix, Arizona, the Truth Mind Reality Conference. This took place March 10th, 2018. My presentation was called Duress, Dissidence, and Deadly Force. This is available in its entirety on gifts.whatonearthishappening.com in flash drive and DVD forms, and it is available for free in its entirety on YouTube, on my website, on some of my other media platforms. So let's jump into this section. This is called What is Duress? Every police officer in the history of humanity has participated in the process of holding the public, holding every individual of the public, no matter who they are, under the psychological state called duress. Let me say that one more time. Definitively, every cop who has ever lived has participated in the process of holding the entirety of the public under the psychological state known as duress. What is duress? Duress is a continuous condition of coercion. Coercion of the free will of a being or a group of beings by another being or group of beings through threats of violence and or actual acts of violence if those being coerced do not comply with the decrees or commands they are given. So that means one class of human beings decrees, you must do my will and my bidding. If you do not do my will and my bidding, you will be punished. There will be coercion to get you to comply. And if you do not comply, violence will be conducted against you. That is what duress is. And it is saying, I am threatening you with violence if you do not comply. And if you do not comply, I will then conduct violence or have my goons, my thugs, conduct violence against you. That is not what I think duress is. That is what duress actually is. When people are held in the condition of duress, they are unlawfully prevented from exercising their free will to engage in rights which they actually possess, and or they are coerced through threats of violence to perform behaviors against their free will. So duress forces people to desist in actions which they do have a right to do, and it forces them to engage in acts that they do not, in their free will, wish to conduct. That is called duress. That is coercion. That is violence. And ultimately, if we're not mincing words or using language euphemisms, that is slavery. That is slavery. This is what duress looks like. It's give your money or your life. It's I will choke you out if you violate the slightest law that politicians have decreed. You will be choked into unconsciousness and death, or beaten into unconsciousness and death. No law is too small or so trivial that the state will not summarily execute you for breaking it. What it is, folks, it's mafia rule. It's mob rulership. That's it. It's we're going to rule you because we have the physical power and ability to do it, and we're going to do it because we want to and we can, and we're going to exert our sick satanic will upon you because we have the force to do it. Now, do you think any member of any institutional organization that takes part in the implementing of that duress can be a good moral person? Just think of it from a pure standpoint of moral logic. No matter what degree they're involved in that system, makes them a bad person by definition. And this is the problem, is that we have people who say I'm a truther, say I'm a person that stands for freedom, and you don't fucking understand this yet. And I'm embarrassed for you because you're too dumb to be embarrassed for your fucking self. Next slide. What's the difference between a police officer and a strong-arm mafia enforcer? Absolutely nothing. They're both members of gangs who don't question orders or think for themselves. They both initiate violence to enforce policy. Both have a code of secrecy, a lack of transparency. Both cite the institution's policies for the violence they manifest in reality. Beautiful meme. Thank you, free police the police. Great meme. Absolutely true. Get as offended as you like. Nothing will make it not true. That is an eternal truth. Look at it from a perspective of a mafia or gang point of view. Very few people do this. The mafia has many different layers of involvement, right? You could look at an organization like La Cosa Nostra, the Italian mafia. They have hitmen that go out and perform executions. They have gambling people, number runners, who take bets. Bets on horses, fighting, etc. Okay? Then they have people all the way down to runners, as they're called. I'm just going to take bets from one person to another and run down this bookkeeping thing and take it in a car or on a bike and take it to another physical place. Whether they're bet runners, drug runners, money runners, all they're doing is really carrying physical things from one place to another. So let me ask you a question. Is any member, for whatever reason they take part in a violent institution like this, a good person? All the way down to their wives who just support their efforts because they receive the benefits? No. No one individual member of a mafia like this is a good person, no matter how small their involvement. Saying, oh, there's some good people in the mob and some bad people in the mob, you sound like you're a fucking retard. Because you are. And guess what? I hope this loses me friends and loses me Facebook friends. I don't give a fuck. I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to tell you the truth about objective morality. I don't give a fuck whether you don't like me or don't talk to me. All I care about is whether you're correct about what's moral or not. And you're still not. Most of you. There is no such thing as a good complicit gang member. It's a violent gang. The mafia is a violent gang. It doesn't matter if you just ran some tickets from one place to another. You're helping them get their agenda done. You're a complicit gang member at any level. By definition, you cannot be considered a truly good, moral human being. By definition of what it means to be good. because you are helping violence and slavery take place. I don't understand why this is so hard for people to get. Because you've never heard it like this. Because everybody wants to dance around the topic and say it in super nice terms instead of saying it how it really fucking is. And I'm sick of people thinking you have it figured out and you don't have anything figured out. And you're teaching wrong things. You're hurting the effort to educate morally, not helping it. Violent street gangs. Let's look at the Crips and the Bloods, for example, or any other violent street gang. These are just stock images. You know, don't read too much into them, folks. I just look for images that try to go along with the concept. Violent street gangs of whatever persuasion they happen to be. White skinhead gangs. Latino, drug cartels in Mexico. Black street gangs in LA. Mixed street gangs in America. It doesn't make a difference. They have membership all the way up at the highest levels of people who command hits to people who conduct hits and executions, down to people who run drugs and again, that's even the people's right to put into their body what they will, down to people who just, do the smallest ancillary tasks. Even people who look to try to make peace between gangs. They're still gang members. This is all about territorial control over a region to operate the black market, which is made possible by government, which is actually made quote unquote necessary by government. These are just lower level thugs. Does any member of a violent street gang, no matter how small their involvement is, or even what they're trying to do to promote peace between neighboring gangs, are they morally good people? Let's just take the example on the upper left, which is the least ostensibly violent image in the picture. The other ones insinuate maybe that they'll go and enforce coercion upon others or actually conduct an execution of someone else. But imagine even two neighboring gangs saying, oh, we don't need to be killing each other. Let's just try to, work in our own territories and promote peace between ourselves. Does that make them good people? No. They're still complicit gang members. They're still people who are violently helping get the agendas of violent street gangs accomplished. So it doesn't matter how low level their involvement is. That doesn't make them a good person. It's just so hard for me to believe that people still fucking think that violent members of violent gangs, no matter how low level their involvement is, can actually be morally good people. It doesn't matter if these people go home and treat their wives well or treat their children well or provide for their family. They're doing that at the expense of other people's rights and freedom through coercion and violence. How can we not understand this? How can we not understand this is the exact same situation as the police in this country or anywhere else in the world for that matter? So you look at all the violent things that police do that they have no right to conduct against people. Kicking a handcuffed woman in the back of the fucking head. You're a real man, pussy. You're a real man, you fucking pussy. You need to get clapped the fuck out. Is what needs to happen to you, boy. Doing that to a woman. You're a pussy fucking coward, son. And nobody ever told you that to your face, fuckhead. Beating people to death, dumping fucking people in wheelchairs down on the ground, hitting their head on the fucking floor, dumping school children out of their seat on the back of their fucking head. Spraying people with mace in the face who have done nothing violent. You're fucking trash. Your whole organization's fucking trash. It's sick what you do, and it's sick that people support you. Any supporter in my sphere of influence and what on earth is happening, if you support this, you're fucking my enemy. And you've always been my fucking enemy. And if you think anyone who is involved in this organization is a good person, you're basically my fucking enemy. You haven't understood it from a deep enough moral perspective, and you haven't understood the moral philosophy deep enough. You're confused, and or at the very worst, you're deliberately ignoring it, which makes you the fucking enemy. And I'm tired of mincing my words, and I don't care how many friends, supporters, viewers, or anything I lose. I don't have allegiance to you. I have allegiance to truth and God. And that is it. And they are one and the same. Understand that. I don't need your allegiance. I don't need loyalty to you, quite frankly. As individuals, on a sovereign level, we only need to forge allegiance to the same truth, law, morality, goodness, and creative force that is one and the same for all beings. Because that is what natural law is. So look at the clown in the middle with his stormtrooper doll that he thinks is somehow cute, and even hinting, this is who we are. We know this is who we are, you know? It's not funny, prick. You're going to find out how not funny it is if you already haven't. And guess what? I'm not supporting, I'm not supporting the type of violent, so-called protests that are really have devolved into riots either. Because I know who they're really being conducted and done by. And again, we talked about that agent provocatoring. They're just trying to call for stronger levels of control for these fucking idiot enslavers. But guess what? At some point, they cannot be allowed to continue to do the immoral violence that they are doing. See, what I'm talking about is we do need to abolish the police, but we need to replace it with nothing. These leftists want to abolish the police and replace it with their version of policing because they want the political control that goes along with that. When you eliminate cancer of a body, what do you replace the cancer with? Do you replace it with a different type of cancer? Well, it's really great that we got that, cancer of the lungs out of the body. Let's replace it with some pancreatic cancer. Because you have to replace cancer with some other form of cancer. You can't just take cancer out of the body and replace it with nothing. Don't you know? This is what arguing with reforming the police is. You can't reform cancer. Cancer is cancer. Garbage is garbage. You don't leave cancer in the body or replace it with nothing. You get it out and keep it out. Well, that's what these people are. So, my question on this slide, the person in the middle, who's just a paper pusher sitting at a desk, is he any less compliant with the agenda of the street gang thugs called the police? Does he bear any less moral culpability? No. Why? Because he is a complicit gang member, just like the other members who are going out on the street conducting physical violence. He is helping them get that agenda accomplished. And therefore, no police officer anywhere at any time for any reason can ever be a truly good moral human being. It is an impossibility. According to law, it cannot be done. It cannot be created. You cannot be a cop and be moral simultaneously. It is an impossibility according to law. The laws of morality do not work like that to permit those two contradictions simultaneously. If you believe that can happen, you are in cognitive dissonance and you do not understand natural law in its fullness. You may think you do, but you don't have a firm grasp of it philosophically or morally. And I'll tell you that because I do have a firm grasp of it philosophically and morally. What these people are psychopaths and order followers who have an agenda to control because they lack internal power in their own lives and don't have any true self-respect. They are self-loathing people who have deeply seated psychological inadequacies rooted in abandonment issues and traumas, who have not done any shadow work, any personal spiritual work upon themselves. So they want to continue the psychological cycle of trauma and victim. The trauma victim cycle. That's all they ever have been. That's all they are now. That is all they ever will be. And that is all they ever can be. What they really are house slaves. It doesn't matter what color they are. It doesn't matter what ostensible race they come from. It doesn't matter whether they're white, black, yellow, brown, purple, blue, or fuchsia. They're house slaves. They are the enslavers of other slaves. They think that they're doing the enslavement when they're actually enslaved themselves by the master class of dark occultists who sit behind the ostensible power enthroned in the shadows. They are really calling the shots, and these house slaves are doing their bidding, just like the house slaves of Civil War era America controlled the field slaves. And there's no bigger piece of trash than a house slave. Because you do it to your own, thinking that because you get thrown an extra blanket, an extra piece of corn, instead of live in a doghouse or even get to live out in the field exposed to the elements, the master gave you a doghouse to sleep in. That's what you would sell your own people out for, you fucking piece of trash. You're fucking trash, and you always have been. You don't deserve any respect because you haven't grown up to earn any respect. To earn any respect, you need to grow up as a true adult and a true spiritually awakened being. You don't just demand respect and then somehow somebody owes it to you. Respect is earned. First of all, respect comes from doing internal work. Respect is generated internally first, and when you're radiating it, that's when you earn it from others. You aren't radiating respect. What you're radiating is you're either an order follower or a psychopath, and what you're ultimately radiating, what everybody really knows deep inside, whether they could verbalize it or not, is you're nothing but a fucking house slave, boy. That's all you are, and that's all you ever have been. And I'll say it to you because no one else will, apparently. Order followers also have the brunt of moral culpability because this is how the dark occultists have duped them into actually taking the karmic debt away from the order giver and placing it firmly into the lap and upon the shoulders of the order follower. And the order follower are too holistically dumb to understand how they've been duped in that regard and how they are going to have their lives flow much more in a difficult way and ultimately not have any of a true happiness manifest in their lives because they've taken on total immoral behavior at the command of someone else. The order follower, this slide is called moral culpability. The order follower always bears more moral culpability. I am not saying that the order giver bears no moral culpability. I am saying that if we look at the ratio of moral culpability, the order follower bears more culpability. And here is why. The order follower always bears more moral culpability than the order giver. Because the order follower is the one who actually performed the action. And in taking such immoral action, they actually brought the resultant harm into physical manifestation. The harm could not have come into physical manifestation in the world if the order follower did not take through their own free will decision to follow the order, the resultant, the initiation of harm that they conducted upon others. The order follower always does that. Therefore, they always bring the manifested harm into physical manifestation in the 3D world. Order following is the pathway to every form of evil and chaos in our world. Order following is the path to every form of evil and chaos in our world. It should never be seen as a virtue by anyone who considers themselves a moral human being. This is why all supporters of police are not truly good people. You can think you are all you want, but if you believe an institution should continue to conduct coercion, violence, and slavery, you condone coercion, violence, and slavery, and therefore you cannot be judged as truly a true moral human being from a standpoint of true objective morality. Order followers have ultimately been personally responsible for and morally culpable for every form of slavery and every single totalitarian regime that has ever existed upon the face of the earth. This is why totalitarian regimes are called police states. They are not called politician states. They are not even called dark occultist states. They are not called judge states. They aren't called magistrate states. They aren't called social worker states. They aren't called politician states. They aren't called bailiff states or lawyer states. They're called police states for a reason. Because that is who brings the slavery and the physical manifestation. The police. The bottom line when it comes to moral culpability is if you actually did it with your actions, your behaviors, you and you alone are ultimately responsible for the resultant harm that comes into physical manifestation as a result of your behavior, not whoever told you to do it. Eternal truth of objective moral law. Nothing will ever make that statement untrue. Get as offended as you like. So now we're going to move into the last part of the deep philosophy of this. And then I'm probably not going to finish this, but then next week I'm going to continue this. And then I'm going to read the entirety of Confessions of a Former Bastard Cop to try to explain what the actual real world actions of police and their mentality really are. So this last section of the presentation here today is called the absolute, sole underlined, foundational, first principle based truth regarding why all police forces on earth should and must be abolished. Like slavery must be abolished because that's what police are the enforcers of slavery. And I am not taking any political stance on this from a right or left wing persuasion because I don't believe in politics. Politics is the belief in the shadows on the wall of Plato's cave. There's a nice quote from Mark Passio from meme makers out there. Politics is the belief in the shadows on the walls of Plato's cave. Okay? So there's not going to be any graphics in this section, just text. Because I really want people to understand this from a foundational philosophical point of view. That's how important it is. So let's go through these 5 slides. Human beings do not emerge from their mother's wombs as immoral beings. This is the problem, first and foremost, is we believe that there is such a thing as human nature, other than human programmability. Let me say this, folks. Human nature is human programmability and nothing more. I'm going to say that again because it escapes most people logically and intellectually. Human nature is human programmability. There is nothing beyond the nature of a human being other than a human being is a programmable being. Let me say that again. Human nature is human programmability. There is nothing beyond the nature of a human being other than a human being is a programmable being. Human beings do not come into the world good or evil. They do not come into a world with knowledge or immediate ignorance. What we put into a human being is what comes out of a human being. Once again, people will argue the nature versus nurture argument from now to all time. And if you don't understand that it's programmability, you are fucking wrong. You haven't studied it enough. You don't know how the fucking psychology works. You don't know how the brain structuring works. You don't know how the formulation of behavior works because you haven't studied deep occult psychology enough. And I have, and I know how it works. And so do your owners and fucking masters know. And that's how they control you. And everybody out there saying, no, Mark, you're wrong. There's a nature to human beings out of the womb. Your owners count on you thinking that and being that fucking dumb. And that's why they own your ass. Boy and girl. And I'm tired of saying it nice to you and having people insist that they know when you're fucking wrong. You're just fucking wrong. Human beings do not emerge from their mother's wombs as immoral beings. Immoral behaviors are learned or influenced by bad parenting, wrong teaching, the acceptance of unintentional or deliberate misinformation, and pre-existing yet accepted immoral cultural conditions and beliefs. In essence, garbage input in the form of information results invariably and unwaveringly in garbage output in the form of behavior. And guess what, folks? I've just given you one of the occult secret of secrets. I've given you something that the dark occult, dark Luciferians of the dark occult hold so tightly to themselves that they don't want what's in that little paragraph right there getting out to the world and being understood on a mass scale. That's foundational principle number one, foundational truth number one about why we don't need a control system of policing and government. And guess what? 99.99999% of the garbage, illiterate, completely philosophically lack of understanding public in total ignorance will refuse to the death what's on this slide. They'll refuse it to their fucking ignorant deaths. Nothing will ever make this statement untrue, and people better learn it. If you want to fight who we're really up against, you better learn the truth of this statement. Human beings don't emerge from their mother's womb as either moral or immoral beings. Either way. Immoral behaviors are learned or influenced by bad parenting, wrong teaching, the acceptance, or whether it's put out there unintentionally or even deliberately, of misinformation and pre-existing yet accepted immoral cultural conditions and beliefs. The very essence of this statement is that if you put garbage into a human being in the form of the information that they take in, you are going to receive in the 3D world as a manifested result in our environment, garbage behavior or immoral behavior. So then if you look at the solution cannot be to try to control things from the realm of manifestation or the result. You have to influence things from the realm of the cause. The causal realm, not the realm of the manifested 3D reality. That's called putting bandages on the wound instead of actually addressing the psychological issue that forces someone to continue to cut themselves and create scars. And then you're calling out for bandages. That's what the police are. They're bandages for a psychologically diseased society that doesn't want to learn where the root causal factor of that psychological illness came from. Folks, this is alchemical gold, what I'm giving people in this episode. This is the heart of everything that's going on. From a psychological standpoint, I'm exploding the truths of the occult world onto the dumb, ignorant public, the profane public. And most of them still can't grasp it. I'm giving you the knowledge that your owners possess and are holding back from your understanding. I, as an individual, have exploded that knowledge onto the world. And I know definitively I've thrown pearls before most swine. I'm going to do it anyway. Because that fulfills my dharmic destiny and what I came here to do. And the rest is your fucking karma. Not mine. The conditions explained in the previous slide are unknown and or unaccepted causal factors for immoral human behavior. That means most human beings will never accept what I put there. They either don't know it, or they don't want to know it, or they refuse to know it. They will not accept the true causal factors that I've just given you in slide 1. Since most human beings either do not know or refuse to accept the truth regarding human behavior, they erroneously believe that the answer to the problem of immoral behavior is to set up a system of control to ostensibly provide quote-unquote protection for human beings such as government, police, military, etc., instead of correct moral education for the young. If we gave correct moral education to the young and they had the correct information as input, their behavior would not be immoral garbage as output. But we don't have correct parenting. We don't have correct education set up in that regard, and we refuse to do it as a people. And that is why those conditions continue. The immoral behavior continues. Slide 3 of this deep occult philosophy. Systems of control invariably attract to them those who have the internal desire to control and abuse others because of their own psychological imbalances and inadequacies. What I've just spent the last 3 hours explaining, the bulk of the last 3 hours. This inevitably creates a system entirely built upon corruption, which is what we have now. The very idea of power over others attracts human beings, or as I've called them, garbage, to the garbage of government. And it attracts human beings with the absolute worst psychological and behavioral qualities, which I've also just outlined and explained. Such systems of control are inherently immoral by inception, by definition, because they themselves are built upon the false belief that some people may be granted or delegated rights that others do not possess, when in fact they are coercion, violence, and slavery in their actual manifested behaviors. And we'll go over this again next week. Slide 4. Those corrupt human beings eventually believe that they have the right to rule everyone else, and they are willing to use coercion and violence to keep their subjects, or really, if we're not euphemizing, their slaves in line. Because the belief in authority is so widespread, most people actually believe that this class of corrupt and violent human beings have legitimate moral authority to command the behaviors of others. Most people even believe that this corrupt class of humans should possess a monopoly on the use of physical force, and that everyone should abdicate their inherent right and responsibility of self-defense to this corrupt class of human beings called the government and the police. We're on the last slide, but you know what, folks? We've really run out of time for this edition of What on Earth is Happening. This is too important to rush. I'm going to reiterate this very deep occult philosophy in the next episode, which will be part 2 of the psychological state of police and their supporters. And we'll be going into a full reading of Confessions of a Bastard Cop next week when we finish this very important occult philosophy. You've been watching What on Earth is Happening? Ladies and gentlemen, government is slavery. We'll see you right here next week.